Howdy nerds! Hope you're having a good day. So today is, well, it's a big one. So we're going to be talking about the Legendary Banner. We're of course talking about Legendary Lyn, and since it's Golden Week, a lot of you probably have orbs to spend. You're probably wondering what color you might want to roll on, or which would probably be the best to get the best amount of, power out of your orbs. Well, this Legendary Banner is probably by far one of the best that we've had, just based on the quality of unit that you can get. Some of them will require a bit of building, but others will come with nice skill sets from the onset. So we're going to be going over that, and we're going to be going over every color and character individually. We're not going to be giving them rankings, but I will be telling you the pros and cons of getting them, okay? And then at the end of every color, we'll talk about how well that color might do. So, alright, let's jump on in, shall we? So, let's start off with the first color, that of course is red, and we're going to be starting off with Fallen CELICA. So there are her stats. We're going to talk about her passives and skills that she has that are of note, that are something that she has that might be really nice to have as she comes out. Again, we're not going to be talking about skill inheritance. We're just going to be talking about what they come with and if you're going to be getting a good unit with that, okay? So there's her stats, and let's talk about her passives and skills of note. So first off, her weapon, Beloved Sophia. Well, it allows her to buff her stats at full HP. In fact, it gives quite a bit of, buff to all of them. Oh, and it grants +3 defense, which means that she's going to be a fairly bulky child when at full HP. She also has access to Chill Speed, a passive that is meant to screw with speedy targets. The highest speed unit on the opposing team will be hit by a -7 speed, which is insanely powerful and something that will be really useful if you ever need it. From there, let's talk about pros. As a bulky sword unit, and yes, she is fairly bulky, 27 defense, that's without her weapon, 26 resistance is nothing to sneeze at, especially when you have her at full health. She will be quite a bit bulky. She also has a natural 35 attack and 35 speed, which is insanely powerful for a sword unit. So if you want to roll on this and go for that, I highly suggest it. She's actually fairly strong. The only thing that is really a problem with Fallen CELICA, of course, is that she's already in a pretty clustered, put-together, archetype of weapon. Swords have a lot. There are a lot of sword units in the game right now, obviously. And from there, we also have to mention that, of course, Sophia's effects is, well, it's kind of hard to maintain. You need to make sure she's at full health, or else she doesn't get that additional effect, which means you either need to run something like a healer with her, some unit that has some sort of, healing ability, or give her a passive that has that ability as well. And it's really hard to, balance that. It can be. But if you manage to do it, she can provide you with a lot of damage, and she can be very, very useful. Plus, kill speed's awesome. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing, shall we? So, next up is Erika of the Sacred Memories banner, which is a Cavalier Tome unit in red, which is really cool and something I really enjoy. And, I mean, the other Cavaliers, we have, what, Leo? Yay? But, Leo is pretty cool if you can build him whichever way you want to, but Erika is obviously meant to be a much stronger, aggressive tome unit. So, naturally, we're going to talk about her weapon Gleipnir, which grants her +3 res, and if the foe is at full HP, she also gets an additional +3 attack and speed. Her B and A passive, Swift Sparrow and Desperation, of course, will work well with her without having you to put much, effort into her build. And the other things we need to talk about, of course, are her pros. She has a high-speed red tome, she's a high-speed red tome Cavalier with great mobility as well. She's excellent for any sort of Cavalier team that you might want to go with. She has great accessibility there, and she's also kind of a bit rare with the whole tome Cavalier red unit thing. The only problems, of course, are that she has pretty low HP, 36 is not very high, and her defense is 20, which will not aid her, especially if she's going against anti-Cavalier weapons, which will extremely hurt her. Like, she will be destroyed by that fairly easily. But if you're looking to get a good Cavalier red tome unit, you're going to probably want Erika. She can be incredibly strong. She also, has really good skills. Swift Sparrow's pretty nice. From there, though, let's talk about what else we got, shall we? So, moving on from the other red to another red, we of course have Legendary Ike. Now, Legendary Ike is a lot of things. He has an inbuilt distant counter weapon, which is always really, really nice. Warding Breath, which will grant him additional res and cooldown when hit, so therefore his exclusive Aether skill, which has shorter cooldown, will be even shorter. And he also has Defense Tactic, which is great for mixed teams, so if you need to roll with any of those, I highly suggest it. You can also get him for free, of course, if you happen to have the Xenolog, so if you need him, go for him for free. From there, let's go with pros. He has strong physical, defense, attack, and HP. Built-in counter weapon, we've already talked about. That really helps him. Provides an attack boost to those when they have the proper blessings, and of course it's the right time of, the season, what have you. It will be pretty helpful to have him. He will, provide additional attack buff to them. From there, though, let's talk about his cons. 30 speed is, well, a bit low on, for him. If it kind of sucks that he has to deal with that, but add to the fact that his res will just probably not save him too much. Even with Warding Breath, it's still going to be a bit of a challenge for him. So it's really pick your poison. Honestly, as a unit, he's incredibly strong. Distant counter is always a really nice ability to have inbuilt into your weapon, so therefore you don't have to worry about messing up that A slot, and since he can run things like breaths without having to use any sort of distant counter, it really helps him out. And of course, all in all, legendary heroes like him are pretty competent and will really serve you very well. Alright, so all in all, Red this time has a really strong setup. It has, a really nice Tome Cavalier with Erica. Ike is, of course, always useful. And finally, we, of course, have, Fallen CELICA, who, we've already kind of gone over that. All in all, I would rate Red as probably one of the highest colors you can roll for. But there are still so many more to go, and we need to really talk about those a bit more, shall we? So let's move on to blues, shall we? For the first blue, we have MICAIAH. And MICAIAH is a fascinating unit. She's very anti-meta in some ways, and that's mostly because of her tome, Thani, which has killer effects against both armored and mounted units. She also comes with distant defense, which is an excellent combination for her. It allows her to be a little bit more tanky, at least against mages, and well, that's a lot more going for her. Thani is really just amazing in how it works. First off, high attack and res means she can tank mages really well, fight back in return, and Thani allows her to, of course, delete certain units, especially armored units who tend to have a little less, res on their team. Some mounted units are also going to just be decimated. The only cons that I can really see with her are that her low speed and defense will mean that she probably shouldn't be in the front lines, obviously. You're going to get doubled, and if you manage to get doubled by a strong physical unit, MICAIAH is probably going to perish pretty quickly. So you're going to need to be careful with MICAIAH, obviously. That's basically it. MICAIAH is a pretty strong tome unit, and will serve you well if you ever have any sort of problems with certain units, especially those who happen to be of the armored or mounted variety. Next up, let's talk about the next blue unit, shall we? Oh god, it's Shigure. Shigure, this is the first one we got, the Performing Arts variety. I will just say real quick, as a unit, he is of course a blue tome unit, but he also has the advantage of being a singer. So he comes with Sing, and that allows other units to have extra actions, which is really awesome. He also comes with blue tome Valor for SP grinding other blue tome units in case you need that. Geyser Dance allows him to buff those he's giving his actions to, and of course he will, buff res and defense with it. So that's a really nice combination. The only problem, however, we'll get into that in a second. Let's go with pros first. Shigure is a really strange combination. He's a tome unit, and he's also a singer or dancer. And this allows him to be a really strong support unit. And he can also do chip damage from a distance. But the problem is, of course, that his stat line means that he's not going to be able to do much outside of that. But I will remind you that dancers are somewhat rare. Most of the really powerful dancers are, well, they're hidden away. They're not exactly, in the pool right now. A lot of them are seasonal, and we actually have 2 this time around. And honestly, Shigure can be really useful, and any dancer can really pull their weight if you need something like that. And it's always helpful to have more of them, I think. So Shigure, will be a really good advantage if you want it, but it's really hard to say if he will be able to really deal damage is the question. Yeah, but, you know, it's really what you can think of when it comes to him. From there, though, we also have to talk about, of course, Legendary EPHRAIM. Oh boy. Legendary EPHRAIM is, of course, a mounted unit. He's a Cavalier. And with that, he also grants a legendary buff to defense. His weapon, Flame Sigmund, grants him more damage, and, well, when certain conditions are met, like when he's surrounded by enemies, it allows him to have a guaranteed follow-up attack, which is really nice for him. It can be really advantageous if you do get that, because he is a powerhouse. 36 attack is nothing to sneeze at. Solar Brace also allows him to, heal off skill triggers, which means if you're using something fast like Moonbow, he'll heal a bit. This also, of course, stacks with certain skills like Solar Aether, so if you want a additional heal there, that might help you out too. Including this, of course, we need to go into pros. Physical monster, obviously. 36 attack, 33 defense, and a Cavalier unit, which means that he's going to get buffed. He's going to, of course, have a lot going for him. Flame Sigmund and Solar, Brace allow for a lot of damage and, of course, a lot of heals. The only problems, of course, are that his speed and res are not going to be helping him. He has 18 res, which means that any sort of mage may very well kill him. So you're going to need to be careful with him. The other thing, of course, is that he also has to deal with anti-Cavalier weapons, and not listed here is that Flame Sigmund can be a little bit unwieldy to use, depending on the situation, so you're going to need to balance those out, okay? All in all, though, blue is looking incredibly strong, too, actually. We have a Dancer, we have a really great meta unit with certain things that can destroy armored emblem units, and if you happen to have any sort of, need for, for another legendary like EPHRAIM, then you are definitely going to be dealing with this pretty well, I have to say. Next up, let's talk about, well, green. Now, green has a lot of units that are going to be pretty nice to have, okay? So, first off and foremost, we have to talk about INIGO. Performing Arts INIGO. Same kind of situation that comes with Shigure. He's a dancer, like he always wanted to be. His mom would be so proud. Allowing other units to have additional actions is really nice. Has Gale Dance, which gives speed when he gives their additional actions. And also he has Hone Attack, which is just kind of a bonus. It's always nice to have a dancer with that ability. From there, though, we're going to, same kind of situation that comes with Shigure is that he has a lot of, accessibility. He's a dancer with ranged, so he can provide, chip damage from far, and he can provide support, so it's really nice. Also, his speed is actually quite high considering the fact that dancers tend to have middling stats when it comes to this. At least, it's more prominent on the ranged dancers than anything else. But the con, of course, is that his stats will not allow him to do that much outside of support and building him maybe to counter certain units, like, say, with a Raven Tome or Triangle Adept. However, can't understate this enough. Can't be understated enough, or overstated. Basically, dancers, really powerful units, and it always helps to have more than, 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or, 7. Who knows? Still, it's a decent enough unit. I still feel green is actually quite strong this time around. From there, let's talk about Halloween Henry. Now, Halloween Henry, oh boy, he was our first ever armored tome unit. Now, he's a rare combination of that because we don't typically get these outside of seasonals, and I don't think we've ever had one outside of seasonals, so there you go. He comes prepared with Armored March, which is actually pretty good for anyone who wants to start building an Armored Emblem team. He's a decent unit for that. He has Armored March, which means that he can give, as long as other units that are around him are armored, he'll be able to boost their movement, which means that they will be able to move beyond their one space that they usually have. He also, of course, has Spectral Tome, which induces the panic effect on foes within 2 spaces after an attack. Basically, that, that turns bonuses into penalties, which can be kind of useful if you decide to run that. All in all, when it comes to Halloween, Henry, he's a good unit. He has impressive bulk, considering, and his offensive stats are actually fairly good, too. 34 speed, 33 attack, of course. And that is something that I feel can't be, talked about enough. He's actually quite speedy for an armored unit, and he has the stats to pack it up. So if you happen to have a good use or you need to fill in that green spot on your team, Halloween Henry will probably deal that for you. The only problem is, of course, that he has slightly less defense than you would probably expect from an armored unit. He also lacks movement when not used in an armored team setting, unless you use a seal. He also, of course, has problems against anti-armored units, but that's pretty much a given, as it is. All in all, Halloween Henry is a really good start to building an armored unit, or at least an armored team, especially when we start to dive into colorless, which we'll do that in a bit, but we do need to talk about, of course, our lovely Lady of the Wind. We're talking about Lynn. Legendary Lynn! Yay! Excitement. So, all in all, I'm really impressed with her stats. Well, impressed enough. 36 speed is pretty good. And I will just talk about her passives and skills of note. Both her weapon, Swift Mulligar, and her A passive, Laws of Seike, they grant her additional stats when around allies. These are things like speed and attack, and then, of course, all of them if you happen to have, a certain amount of allies around here. So, around her. She also comes equipped with Speed Tactic, which is something people have been wanting for ages, and that makes her especially helpful in teams that have two of certain units, or mixed teams that are, mixing and matching certain movement types. So all in all, really great. Oh, also she has, new earrings and a legendary buff for attack 2 if you happen to have wind. Blessings on any unit. The pros, of course, are a strong speed stat and passive effects. That means that Lynn will be especially powerful when grouped up with your allies. She also provides a buff to attack with her proper blessings. The cons, of course, is that she lacks defense. Yeah, 21 defense is not going to help her. Technically, her res is a little low too, but she should be able to survive some, maybe some blue tome units. I'm talking about you, Reinhardt. But, oh, I also forgot to mention, of course, this is our first green bow unit. We're going to have to see how this works out in actual gameplay. But, of course, don't put her around melee or physical, powerful units. She's going to just probably melt. She also loses her additional stats when she's not around her allies, so make sure A, she's around her allies, and B, her allies don't die. Kind of obvious. But simply put, I'm actually quite impressed with green this time. I would say green is probably the second best color to pull on this banner, just because of the sheer amount of craziness that's going on. Blue has some good advantages, red has some great advantages. Actually, green is probably tied with red for me. So they have a lot going on. We're gonna be seeing a lot more of Lynn as time goes on, and chances are, I'm wondering how green bows are gonna work, but if it's probably going to be pretty interesting to see how all of this plays out as time goes. But all in all, green is probably pretty high up there when it comes to what color you want to pull. Now let's move on to the finale. And, well, let me just say this one is probably the crazier one, at least. So let's talk about colorless. So first up we have Jenny. Now Jenny, our sheep, our lovely, lovely sheep with cotton candy hair, she's home again. Jenny brings with her, of course, Wrathful Staff. That allows her to deal full damage with her staff, which means that she isn't getting the typical penalty that comes with that. I could go over that, but basically, staff units deal half damage without it. So so that's really great. It's a good thing to have for her when you start to go. She's able to deal a lot of damage. She also can heal, and of course, she comes with gravity as her staff, which is actually a fairly nice skill effect, especially if you happen to refine it. Pros, of course, are Jenny's attacks. Well, they're quite high. 35 attack for her is really strong, and that can deal a lot of damage. And if you give her a refine, like, say, dazzling effects, which means that if you refine that staff, no enemy can, counter-attack her, no matter what. So that's a really nice advantage for certain staff units, especially Jenny, who can pump out the damage. And, of course, she can heal, I guess. Yeah. Alright, so next up, Jenny's lack of speed and defense, of course, means that she's going to be easily doubled, and if they happen to have a, physical attacker, she has some fairly strong res, but if they happen to be an archer or any sort of melee target with a, axe, lance, sword, hell, even a knife, you're going to probably see her die So be careful with her. You keep your little sheep safe. From there, though, I will say, real quick, that we're going to be moving into the next things, and oh boy. Next up, of course, is Legendary Robin F. So help me if there's a Legendary Robin M in the future. Anyways, good things about Legendary Robin are actually pretty neat. First off, Distant Counter is built into her Dragonstone. She has Expiration just like her male counterpart. And she also has an inbuilt passive in her A slot that gives her immunity to bow, advantages against flyers, which she is. And of course, Robin can grant a speed boost with the proper blessing. Her C skill allows her to debuff resistance as well with the, after she attacks, resistance smoke. That can be useful for mages or herself in some situations, I guess, if you happen to maybe have a dancer with her. A great flying unit with balanced stats. As a colorless flying dragon, her weaknesses are less pronounced when it comes to the color triangle. She also, of course, has a fairly good stat spread. The only problem, though, is that she is still very much a dragon, so therefore, while she has good defense, I don't think it will really help her against any sort of dragon killer, especially be it mage, at least if you happen to run into any Julias, Deirdres, or things like that, or any sort of Falchion user. So you're going to need to be careful with that. And also, she kind of lacks any advantages over color, being that she's a colorless, which usually is not too much of a problem, but since she's a Dragonstone unit, which is kind of weird, you can see some sort of problems there. She also, of course, has some problem with Raven Tomes, obviously, so you'll need to be careful. But all in all, Legendary Robin, fairly strong unit, pretty nice to have. And then finally, we're going to talk about the big mother, the Mac Daddy of them all. That, of course, is Halloween Jacob. Halloween Jacob, oh boy. Let me just tell you. Passives and skills to note, the only armored bow unit in existence at this moment. At this moment in time, at the end of April, I'm fairly sure, what is it today? April 28th. Jacob comes prepared with Wary Fighter, which means that no one will really double him, so as long as he... Oh god. As long as his HP holds. Unfortunately, I see that there's a typo there. Okay, well that's great. Good going on me. His hoe holds. Don't talk about his hoe, okay? He also comes with a monstrous bow, which inflicts panic effects to enemies within 2 spaces after an attack. As an armored archer, Jacob can afford to worry about his, he does not need to worry about his meager, good lord, his meager speed stat, because with proper builds, Jacob can become a monster with such skills as, Bold Fighter, Vengeful Fighter. He can become a real nuisance, especially if you have certain things like Guard Bow, Slaying Bow, things like that. His flexibility is really quite strong. To give you an example, Bold Fighter with Brave Bow means he attacks 4 times no matter what. He gains, of course, the ability to, use his cooldown effects a lot faster. Things like that. Same with the Vengeful Fighter when he's attacked, at least for certain bows and things like that. He is a strong unit. The only problems, of course, are that he lacks, movement skills, unless he has a seal or, of course, someone is buffing him. And then he's also weak to armor killers, and of course his speed will not aid him if he loses Wary Fighter, be it from HP or just because you removed it. So, it's really up to you on your picking the poison thing, but legendary banners are always kind of a strange little nuisance. First, though, I will just say, Colorless has some really strong units. Halloween Jacob is, of course, one of the strongest archers in the game right now. Especially if you build them correctly with certain things like Bold Fighter, all that fun stuff. But all in all, Colorless are probably some of the, at least when combined with certain characters like Genny and, Robin, they're kind of, middling a little bit, but still nonetheless, I would probably say the topmost color to pull for would probably be red, of all things. And then, of course, honestly, it's a tie between, blue, green, and colorless because they all provide either A, a dancer, or B, something powerful like Halloween Jacob here. So it's really up to you on what you want to pull or pick or what you want to decide. But if you do decide to go with this banner, I don't think you'll be disappointed. You'll get some pretty strong units no matter what. So what are you aiming for? Are you aiming for Halloween Jacob? Are you aiming for any of these other units here? Do tell me in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this and found this interesting at all, feel free to leave a like. It really does help. I love doing these things, and I really like talking about the legendary banner and giving you guys an idea of what's coming, so hopefully this helped in some way. Alright, catch you nerds later. Thanks for watching.